My name is Marlene Dupree. I am 68 years old. I spent most of my life as a nurse in upstate New York, raising my only son, Jordan, on my own after my husband passed away from cancer when Jordan was just 5. I worked nights, holidays, and double shifts just to keep food on the table and save enough for Jordan to have a better future. I didn't have the luxury of rest. My home, a modest but beautiful 2-story house in the Hudson Valley, was the one place I poured every ounce of comfort and love into. It was all I had left. Or so I thought. If you've never experienced betrayal from your own child, let me tell you, it isn't like anything else. It's not sharp like a knife. It's slow like frostbite. At first, you don't even realize it's happening. You convince yourself they're just stressed, tired, distracted. But eventually, you wake up and realize the warmth is gone, and they've already started building a life without you in it. That's what it felt like the morning I reached for the doorknob of my own bedroom. And it didn't turn. It was locked. From the inside. Comment family should never feel like strangers. Below if you're serious about protecting your peace.
I knocked once, twice. No answer. I called out to Jordan. Nothing. I walked around the hall and called his cell. Then I heard laughter from inside the room. A woman's voice. His wife Cynthia. Then her saying, "She'll get used to it." My blood turned cold. The pieces started snapping together in slow, horrific sequence. Jordan had married Cynthia during a rushed courthouse ceremony a few months prior. She moved in. I gave her space. I thought we were sharing. I didn't realize I was being replaced.
By the time Jordan opened the door, the room looked nothing like mine. My quilts were folded in a box in the corner. New pillows, new art. The faint scent of her perfume had swallowed every trace of me. He smiled, like this was normal, and said, "Mom, we figured the guest room would be more comfortable for you. No stairs, better for your knees." That was the excuse. My knees. I didn't say a word. Not then. Not when he walked me to the guest room with forced cheer in his voice. Not when I sat on the edge of that smaller bed, staring at the peeling wallpaper in a single drawer. A room meant for visitors. A room not meant to stay in. That night, I didn't sleep. I listened to the hum of my own house, a home I had built, now echoing with foreign laughter. And for the first time in decades, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't my home anymore. But I am not a woman who shouts. I am not a woman who throws plates or demands apologies. I am a woman who listens, who watches, who waits. And that night, I decided I would not be locked in a room again. Not physically, not emotionally, not ever. They had taken the bedroom. They had taken the comfort. But they had forgotten one thing. The house, the title, the deed, that was still mine. I lay in that guest room for hours that night, not because I was tired, but because I was stunned. Somewhere between raising a son and surviving alone, I had forgotten that the people you love most are also the ones who can hurt you in ways strangers never could. I kept asking myself one question over and over. When did this shift begin? And slowly memories started surfacing, moments I had brushed off, red flags I folded into napkins and tucked away because I couldn't bear the thought of being unwanted in my own home. It started small. Jordan began making subtle jokes about me needing rest, or letting the younger generation take over. At first I smiled. I thought it was his way of showing care. Then Cynthia started taking over dinners, unprompted. She rearranged furniture. She made comments about modernizing the decor. I told myself it was just youthful energy, newlywed nesting, but it wasn't. It was a quiet erasure of me room by room. There were dinners where I wasn't invited, vacations planned without even a mention. They began locking the master bedroom when they went out. When I asked why, Cynthia gave a half smile and said, "Just habit." I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that a woman I had led into my home, into my family, couldn't be so bold as to treat me like an inconvenience. But the truth was, I had allowed it to happen one silence at a time. The betrayal didn't come with a scream. It came with my slippers being moved, with my name being left out of conversations, with Jordan asking me to give them space in the very home where he had learned to walk, to read, to become a man. I had held his feverish head through childhood illnesses. I had cried in hospital waiting rooms while he had surgery. I had bought that bed Cynthia now slept in with the last of my nursing overtime checks. Still, I kept smiling. I told myself maybe I was being dramatic. I convinced myself that being a good mother meant giving more, not less. That if I was just a little quieter, a little more helpful, they'd see my worth again. But they didn't, because people only value what you protect, not what you constantly give away. I had failed to protect my place in my own home, and now they thought I had no fight left in me.
But I wasn't bitter. I was becoming clear. Crystal clear. And when a woman like me reaches that kind of clarity, she doesn't beg for love. She makes decisions. She writes names on paper. She goes to banks. She remembers the fine print. I hadn't lost everything. Not yet. I just needed to stop pretending I hadn't noticed.
I spent the next week moving like a ghost in my own home, but not because I was defeated. I was gathering, observing, every meal Cynthia cooked, every smirk she wore when I passed her in the hallway, every careless word Jordan tossed out about downsizing or the future. I logged it all. They thought I was fading, like an old painting left in a dusty attic. But what they didn't know was this. When you've built something brick by brick, you always remember where the foundation lies. And I had built everything. I pulled out the deed from the safe in my closet, the same closet they hadn't yet dared to touch. My name was right there in firm black ink. Sole owner, not co-owner, not shared. Every renovation, every tax bill, every mortgage payment over the last 30 years. Mine, not theirs. I didn't need to scream or raise a hand. I had what they didn't. Legal ownership and a lifetime of quiet strength. They were trespassing in a temple I had built from scratch. Next, I contacted my old friend Gary, a retired real estate attorney who owed me more than one favor from my nursing days when I saved his wife's life. I asked him to come over, quietly. We sat in the guest room and whispered over papers like spies. I asked questions, and he gave answers. Yes, you can sell without their permission. Yes, you are well within your rights. No, they can't stop you. Not even close. That was the moment I felt my first taste of power return, not out of revenge, but restoration. I began reaching out to real estate agents discreetly. I told them I wanted fast but fair offers. I used the guest room to look like a cozy nook for reading, took pictures during the day when Cynthia was at her yoga classes and Jordan was at work. No one noticed. Why would they? They had stopped seeing me altogether. That was their first mistake, ignoring a woman who knows every corner of the house she built. This calm that comes when you know something others don't. A serenity in walking past people who think they're in control, while you carry the real power in your pocket. I watered the plants. Cynthia forgot. I paid the bills. Jordan assumed were automated. I folded towels and smiled when they looked at me with patronizing eyes. And each time I did, I was writing a quiet goodbye with every step. But they weren't going to get a letter. They were going to get a revelation. I didn't want revenge. I wanted balance. And balance, for women like me, doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from timing. It comes from strategy. And I was almost there. The contracts were ready. The buyers had been found. The final signature would only take one more appointment. But I wasn't rushing. No, I wanted them to be fully comfortable, settled. I wanted them to feel invincible. That's when people fall the hardest. It was a Thursday morning when the first showing happened. They were both out. Cynthia had her book club brunch, and Jordan was at his office, probably bragging about how he'd finally gotten his mother to relax. I let the agent in through the back door. He was sharp, efficient, and impressed. This place could go in a week, he said. I nodded politely, pretending to be the sweet old lady downsizing her life. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. He was there to do a job, and I had already done the hardest part, detaching emotionally from a home that no longer felt like mine. The offers came in quickly, 2 serious buyers within 3 days. One of them was an older couple looking to move closer to their grandchildren. The other was a tech consultant who wanted to turn the property into a luxury retreat. The irony wasn't lost on me. Both wanted to bring love and life back into this house. Something that had died the day I was locked in the guest room. I signed the agreement with the older couple. They reminded me of what home should feel like. Gentle, safe, full of mutual respect. I gave Jordan and Cynthia no warning. I waited until the ink was dry, until the buyers had submitted their deposit, until the moving trucks were scheduled. Then, one evening over dinner, chicken parmesan Cynthia proudly said she learned from TikTok. I placed the house keys in the middle of the table and said, without looking up, "We'll need to be out by the end of next week." Forks stopped midair. Silence fell like glass shattering. It took them a full minute to register what I had just said. Jordan was the first to speak. "What do you mean, we?" His voice cracked, and for a brief moment he wasn't a man. He was my little boy again, wide-eyed and unsure, but that was long gone. I looked up and said calmly, "The house is sold. I accepted an offer. Closing is in 10 days." Cynthia scoffed, her face twisting in disbelief. "You can't do that," and I said it, gently, like a nurse explaining something painful to a stubborn patient. "Oh, but I can, and I already did." They demanded answers. They raised their voices. Cynthia accused me of betrayal. Jordan called it a mistake. But I didn't flinch. I had heard that word before. Mistake, when he locked me in the guest room. When he watched me shrink away without question. When he let someone else take my space, my peace, my dignity. This wasn't revenge. This was correction. A rebalancing of power that had gone ignored for too long.
That night, they barely spoke to me. I didn't mind. I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The guest bed was still stiff, the room still small, but I had taken something back. I had broken the illusion they had built around me, that I was powerless, that I was old and soft and easily pushed aside. They had underestimated me, but I had always known my worth. Now they did too.
The next morning was quiet. Too quiet. I expected anger, maybe shouting. Instead, there was a kind of eerie stillness, like the moment just before a storm realizes it has lost its wind. Jordan didn't come down for breakfast. Cynthia paced the kitchen, opening and closing cabinets like she was searching for something she couldn't name. I sipped my tea and read the paper. The balance of power had shifted, and they could feel it in the walls. This house no longer belonged to them, not in space, and definitely not in spirit. By Saturday, they started panicking. I heard Jordan making frantic phone calls from the bedroom. I heard Cynthia crying in the hallway, real tears this time, not the crocodile kind she used when she wanted sympathy. She asked Jordan if he could reverse it. I smiled to myself. You can't reverse clarity. You can't undo the moment someone stops allowing you to take advantage of them. That moment had come and gone, and they were only just realizing it. I caught Jordan on the back porch, looking out at the yard he used to play in as a boy. He turned to me and said, "Mom, you didn't have to do this." And I looked him in the eyes and replied softly, "You did this the day you locked me out of my own bedroom." He opened his mouth as if to argue, but no words came. There was nothing to say. Everything had already been said by the silence of that door, that choice, that betrayal. Cynthia tried to negotiate. Maybe we could all live together somewhere else. Start fresh. I nodded slowly, kindly, but made no promises. The truth was, I had no intention of rebuilding what they had so carelessly broken. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clear. Sometimes, when you give people every part of yourself, they forget you exist as a whole person, and the only way to remind them is to disappear from the story they thought they were writing. The day the moving truck arrived, I watched with sunken eyes as my boxes were loaded first. I kept it simple. I was moving into a small condo, closer to town, easier to manage, quiet, mine. Jordan asked where they were supposed to go. I shrugged gently and said, I trust you'll figure it out. That's what he used to say when I was drowning in bills and he needed extra cash. I figured it was his turn to trust life a little. I left the keys on the kitchen counter the same way I'd once left birthday cakes, packed lunches, and love notes. This time there were no sweet messages, just a final silence that said everything. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I walked out the door, head held high, knowing the storm had passed and I was the one who stood tall in its wake. The first night in my new condo felt strange. No creaking stairs, no shared walls, no footsteps overhead, just the soft hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own breath. I made a cup of tea and stood at the window watching the lights of the city flicker like little silent promises. I wasn't lonely. I wasn't broken. I was still. And in that stillness, I found something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Not the kind others give you, but the kind you give yourself when you stop asking permission to exist. In the weeks that followed, I received a few texts from Jordan, half-hearted attempts to apologize. You know, Cynthia wasn't trying to be cruel. We didn't realize how it felt. We can fix this. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, but clarity. When someone shows you they don't see you, don't respect you, don't protect you, there's nothing left to salvage. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need a reunion. I needed my life back. And now I had it. I planted herbs on my little balcony. I joined a book club at the community center. I started volunteering at the hospital again, just a few hours a week, but enough to remember who I really was. Not just a mother, not just a shadow in someone else's story. I was a woman who had weathered heartbreak, betrayal, and silence, and turned all of it into something sacred, wisdom. One afternoon, I passed by my old house. The lawn was overgrown. A for sale sign leaned half-broken in the yard. The new buyers had backed out. Word had gotten around. A couple fighting in the middle of a sale. A family falling apart. No one wants to buy that kind of energy. It made me sad. Not for the house, but for what could have been. For the son I raised with love, who let ambition blind him to loyalty. But sadness doesn't mean regret. I had none. I wrote a letter that night. Not to Jordan. To myself. I thanked myself for staying strong, for yelling when it hurt, for waiting instead of reacting, for choosing dignity over drama. Because in the end, the most powerful kind of revenge is not destruction, it's survival. It's building a new life from the ashes of the one they tried to control, and loving that life so deeply, you never look back. So here I am, 68, alone, but never lonely, quiet, but never silenced, and free. Truly free. They tried to lock me in a guest room, not knowing I held the keys to the whole house. And when they forgot who built the walls around them, I reminded them with one final move.